It's been really powerful to hear President Biden take an all of government approach around racial equity, around climate, and also around making sure that there's a commitment towards Justice 40, and more specifically, making sure that, particularly with climate benefits, that there is a level of accountability with federal resources. Um, and we often go back and forth because I share with you that while I appreciate Justice 40, I'm here for Liberation 100, that all federal funding will be used to ensure that it is not creating harm, that we are being intentional and accountable for every dollar to center community, and that we are building in such a way that we're moving more than just benefits. It's really about investments, right? Whether it's at the federal level or the state or regional, that there's a level of accountability for the funding in a way that we don't at the back end have to do a level of advocacy. But I know DOT has taken that charge very intentionally, both through the Thriving Network, the Thriving Communities Network, and also the Justice 40 plan. And so I was hoping that you could talk a little bit more about that. And then I'm actually going to go to you, Jenny, to talk a little bit about that accountability that you all have been then holding governments to at the state level.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. And we don't ever have a squabble. We generally agree. So, for how many, by a show of hands, how many are aware of the Justice 40 initiative? Just by a show of hands. Okay. For those who are not aware, the Justice 40 initiative is part of the president's executive order around the climate crisis, but specifically recognizing that we are going to make unprecedented resources available to fight the climate crisis, that those resources, those efforts, at least 40% of those investments should go down and benefit disadvantaged, underserved communities. How are we planning to achieve that? So early in the administration, every agency had to go through a process of identifying a disadvantaged community. Now, when you talk to our colleagues at EPA, HHS, this is not new to them. They've been part of the space. But for the Department of Transportation, this is new. Defining what a disadvantaged community outside what has been in our wheelhouse, which is like rural communities. We know that they're disadvantaged communities when it comes to transportation spending. Tribal communities, we get that. But outside of that, that was not something that we were necessarily accustomed to having a definition around. And that was actually quite remarkable because within the Department of Transportation, we literally got our research teams, our civil rights teams. We went down to the bells of the MOS staff who were in the regions and asked ourselves, what are the key indicators from the lens of a transportation department would define as disadvantaged? And interesting enough, it was those same indicators that our colleagues at HHS would say, or EPA, lack of access, proximity to pollution. And then for us, it became more of a suite of indicators that basically said, if we remove the harm, this would actually be a thriving community. So for us, Justice 40 became a roadmap of how should we be thinking about our investments, our technical assistance, or our policy in communities when we show up. So that was the first moment of conversation for us. So now we have our map. We have our Justice 40 map for the Department of Transportation, which we've been in working collaboration with DOE. And now we're doing the next exercise. For Department of Transportation, we've identified over 39, technically 40, but 39 official programs totaling over $200 billion. Now, with that, technically 40% of the investment should go to disadvantaged communities. But here's the kicker. The language is not investment. So Stephanie, you say the dollar. I think a lot of people pay attention to the dollar. Where is the dollar going? And yes, we're tracking that, but we're taking it a step further. Because just because you put a dollar in a community doesn't necessarily mean it actually provides a benefit. And if it does bring a benefit, who does it benefit? Who is benefiting the most, right? And so we are asking ourselves, not only from a policy standpoint, from a programmatic standpoint, but actually to our grant recipients, when you are applying for these dollars, you can say, yes, my project or my transit line or my bike path is in a Justice 40 community, but we want to know, well, who's benefiting from it? Are you addressing the indicators that we identified? Are you creating more wealth for that within that community? And we want you to speak to it because if you do, you're more likely to be competitive to our programs. The second piece of that is now the part that's going to be the hardest. Because the key aspect of Justice 40 is, and for our lifetime with the administration, the next couple of years that we're here, is making sure the dollars are getting to the places and we're tracking that they're getting there and they're structured in a way. The real power of Justice 40, as I said before, if you have 10 or 20 indicators that triggers this disadvantage, can you trace the dollar that's going to those communities in the policy framework centered, community driven centered? Are you removing the harm? And that is going to take time, and it's going to require a long-term partnership with the community, with the local government, with private sector, with philanthropy. And that is where we need you, because we can't do this on our own. Our job is now to put the dollars in your hands, but it's also a requirement of making sure the partnerships on the ground are steadfast, that they actually can turn those investments into the transformation, so that when we come back, I don't have any more Justice 40 communities. That there is not a community that has harm, because we either fix it or we're creating more thriving communities for people, because we actually do have a crisis. The places that are thriving cost too much, because we do not have enough great thriving communities that are accessible for all. And that is our job as a Department of Transportation, working in concert with EPA, working in concert with HHS, working in concert with HUD, to make sure that our resources are helping create that. And so that's the opportunity that we have at Justice 40, but also it's an open invitation, because it requires a federal and community and local partnership to get it done.
And I want to speak specifically because I think while DOT has done some great leadership work within the administration and interagency family, the reality is that 90% of the funding that I was talking about ultimately is going to be decided by states. And so there's a level of accountability that also has to happen. And in this moment, many governors have not necessarily even set a priority around their infrastructure funding. And so it's critical for us to really get a better sense of how are these governors actually going to be spending the dollars, and holding them accountable to set a similar executive order framework that offers this level of accountability.